All right, well, Murphy, that's your song. You can explain why you picked that. And before you do, though, we're on to episode 5, if I count properly, of OGA Athletics opening the Echo Chamber with the usual crew. So we'll go around with the usual fist bumps. I think today, just in the group text, kind of like the Kachucks and JT Millers.
We're going to drop the gloves tonight?
Yeah. The group text today was about how grimy it was and whether we should probably even do this one, but I'm glad that we've done it. So I think it's kind of a neat segue into the topic. But before we get there, Murphy, that song, no one's ever heard it before.
Yeah, what year is that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which band?
Is that Bieber?
So yeah, that dates back to the 80s, and so it takes me back to high school, and then training in the gym. And
Which gym?
Ironworks.
In Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
And they play that
Yes. Believe it or not.
daily?
Daily. And,
Still play it?
Oh, yes. And going up to Waskasiu or Waka or it's everywhere. Everybody knows that song. And it's a great song to get pumped up to.
It's pretty crazy. I think we talked about some of the other episodes too, but some of these that come up, like that song, when you think of it's from Australia, like the band obviously, that when they made that song, that it would be however many years later, like an icon song in winter seasonal sport communities like Canada, Saskatchewan for hockey.
And generational.
Right? Like when you make this song and it becomes a sport icon song, that's got to be weird for them a bit. Like I wonder if that song is as big in Australia for their sports. Do you know?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Not for rugby league or...
Like, they don't. I bet you they don't play it remotely as much as we play it at every junior hockey game that kids are at.
Yeah.
We wonder how to export it over here, but
I'll find out in a couple months.
yeah, well, you're going there. I'm going there, and you want to go there, so.
Working on it.
I don't want to do the flight. It's a
Flight?
long ass way to go.
It's worth it.
Yeah, I know. I just got a 6 and a 9-year-old, so I gotta either find someone to. You guys offer to babysit?
No.
Yeah, that trip is a long one, whether you're adults or with kids.
We flew with 3 kids under the age of 9. It was a nightmare.
Before iPads.
Yeah, exactly. Before
We-
electronic soothers.
Gravel, though.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yeah, not come on.
Grandpa's cough medicine.
So, just kind of going off the AC/DC hockey thing, one of the comments we got, because we're at episode 5 now, is that we've had a couple of guests. We kicked it off, the premiere was with just us, and then we've had a couple of guests since then. And I think the feedback from people has been, good overall, but also just continuing to want to know more about our thoughts, since we've promoted ourselves as experts with 40,000 hours. And so then I think...
Oh, I never said I was an expert in anything.
No, by definition we are.
Pursuit.
But through expertise we are, and that's just a fact. Now, whether people agree, it's a fact. So, but that's part of it. It's funny you say that, because I think our group collectively is not totally comfortable talking about ourselves. I mean, some of us maybe more than others. I'm looking at myself and you. But in any event, I think people have wanted to hear a little bit more about us, and just when we say we're OGA athletes in this pipeline of a lifetime of athletic pursuit, how would we do that? And they also were asking a little bit about you, because you're kind of the real old guard of our group.
Thanks.
Well,
The oldest old
guard. So then the question when we were texting around today was, what are we going to talk about? And I think we kind of settled, ironically, on this group text concept that actually blew up for one of the professional sports in the last week, when there was a group text going around with professional hockey players, which led to some pretty cool fireworks in their sport. And then I think we settled on the idea that we would just conceptually talk about what we say is the underpinning mindset for OGA athletics, is like you just can't turn it off. Whether you get paid 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 million, or you get paid nothing, or you get paid a little bit, or you do it amateur, it doesn't matter. Like, we're here because we're wired this way. And I think the world saw a group of young men wired that way and expressed themselves that caught a lot of people off guard, like in a constructive way. So it led to a huge amount of debate. And we're not going to try to match like Spittin' Chicklets and all those guys about that. But I think that was kind of the thought that perhaps we could just, because some of us have played, you've played of our group the highest level of hockey. I think that's pretty clear. So it's not so much the hockey inside, but just, maybe I'll just kick it off with that is, for those that, I don't know how you don't know, but there was the Four Nations, you correct me if I get this wrong, okay? But I didn't even know that this tournament was in replacement of the NHL All-Star game. That's how below the radar it was for me, because I thought it was some sort of other concoction thing. I didn't know what it was. So it was in replacement of the annual NHL All-Star game that they would put the Four Nations, that's Canada, US, Finland, and Sweden together in some sort of round robin, then just play out to a final game.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, that was happening when the NBA, the basketball league, was doing their All-Star thing. And so I wasn't going to watch it, except that, it's Canada playing. And then I started to get wind that it was a bit serious. Like, people were treating it seriously. And
it was hyped.
Like, where did you watch it?
Coming into it.
Well, so I hear the game that they sent this thing into the stratosphere was the game between Canada and the US, the first one, right? And prior to that, I knew it was on, but you were probably getting ready for it anyway, watching the other stuff. But I knew it was on. I was in here and I set it to record. And so it's going for the first, a couple minutes. And I'm just around the corner here. It's on the other side. I'm hearing this howling from the crowd. And I couldn't pick up. I've never heard a crowd response like that. Like, I thought it's not the national anthem. It's not a goal. And then my oldest son, Walter, was on one of these podcasts, the hockey guy. He texts me and he goes, I've never seen anything like this. I look at my phone and holy shit, what's happening? So I go around to check it out and it's recording live and I'm catching the end of, I think it was the third fight, which I didn't know was the third fight. I thought it was just the first fight. So I hit pause, I go back and then all of a sudden, what has gone on here?
You missed two.
I missed 9 seconds of 3 fights. So you take it from here and explain what kind of happened.
So coming into the game, sounds like there was a group text between, a few players on the U.S. team. And they were, first off, the best of the best haven't played from a global standpoint for, I believe, 9 years. That was this.
Is that right?
Stat
Okay, fair enough. So that's cool.
So there was a lot of anticipation just to see how much some of the other hockey world powers had brought their game up.
Okay, fair enough.
Finland, Sweden always have great teams. U.S. has been, on the forefront and precipice of hockey advancement for years. So I think there was this huge anticipation of how well the U.S. was going to do. Plus, they've arguably got the best goalie in the world in Connor Hellebuck.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Who
He's
plays
not
for the
Ken
Jets.
Dryden. Like that? That's some old school stuff right there.
That is old
Vladislav
school.
Tretiak.
Vladislav Tretiak, 72. We'll go there later.
So some of the boys, the Kachuk brothers, a couple others, were texting, what if we did this in the game? We want to show national pride. We want to throw the Canadians on their heels. And, everything I saw, once they saw what the starting lineup was for the Canadian squad, because depending on who's home or visitor, you have to declare your starting lineup first.
Oh, okay.
So they saw the starting lineup, they put their lineup in, and rest is history, so to speak. And, I saw a lot of posts, and not to get political or anything, but people are like, oh, this is what happens when you boo, the U.S. national anthem. This type of thing.
Okay, give the context. Where was the game?
It was in Montreal.
Yeah.
And the U.S. anthem started playing, and there was booing. And, I'm pretty against that because that is disrespectful. You may not agree with certain politics that are taking place, but you never boo an anthem type
But
of thing.
I mean, again, let's be total real time. I was a little interested because I saw that part. I was interested to see that.
Yeah.
Because Donald Trump, president of the U.S., was trolling Canada hockey in the build-up to it, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Here we go, 51st state play for, spotting the U.S. and all this, right? So there, to your point, had been a little geopolitical added, a little spiciness.
Yeah.
So that caught my attention too.
I get the booing, but I also agree with Mike. Like I spend a lot of time in America. I think most of us have, Mike. You know, you spend a lot of time in the United States. Like I genuinely rarely have a poor experience with any American people. Like it just has always been really good. And in a case in point, of the night of the game, after the game, I'm in the pool. And there's an older couple that.
So where are you?
Yeah.
I was in Lake Louise this week.
Okay.
I was skiing with
Alberta in the mountains.
In the mountains,
Canada.
kind of
Canada.
Banff National Park and
51st state.
in the 51st state. And no, we got talking about. He's a very left-leaning guy, and he said he's embarrassed by. He said, and I mean, he's one guy. I don't know who he's speaking for other than himself, but he's embarrassed about Trump talking shit about Canada, but he's hurt that Canadians are booing the anthem too. Like he said, I don't like hearing that. Like he said, I think the American people generally like Canadians. If he went and took a poll, he was pretty opinionated that most Americans don't think Canadians are up to no good in trade and this and that. So that booing the anthem. You can say what you want about Trump, you can say what you want about whatever, but it's a nation of people that's our neighbor, and usually have pretty good experiences.
100% lowbrow. And so people were thinking that these fights all occurred because the anthem was booed. My perspective, absolutely not.
Political.
This happened because these guys wanted to get out there and set the stage from the very first
Set the tone.
drop of the puck. And this just goes to show how passionate all of these players were to be participating in this tournament. Did they get paid? No, none of them got paid to do this. This was all for national pride and to show that their country has the best hockey program versus the others. Because Canada's on the pedestal from a hockey standpoint.
Stat-wise.
Has been for years, right?
Always.
Yeah, produces the most number of hockey players internationally, blah, blah, blah. So they wanted to set the tone early. And I'm thinking to myself, you've got arguably the two brothers, Brady and Matthew, are such instrumental players for the teams that they play on. You put them together and it's like a 1 + 1 = 5.
Yeah.
And to take themselves
and throw in the dad story.
Yeah, their dad. Well, he never won a cup.
But this tied back to the 96.
Yeah. And he fought Claude Lemieux.
Yeah. Which was the last time that they beat Canada in a best-on-best.
Yeah. So I was worried about them taking themselves out of the game, and I'm like, this is great. They're playing against our third line right now. They've taken themselves somewhat out of the game.
Oh.
And ultimately ended up losing, and this is some of the best, fastest hockey I've ever seen. And, all the while I'm watching this game and thinking about what a leader Crosby is and some of these older people are on the team and how this parallels to the old guard.
Yeah.
And what we talk about and what we're trying to do here in hopefully pass down some wisdom and inspiration to others. Well,
by not lecturing, by just modeling, like you said a couple episodes ago, right? You just do it.
Well, he just did it by example. Crosby led by example.
You know what? He finished as a top scorer, right? I think.
He
was one of.
He was top 5 for sure.
He did everything.
Yeah, he hit. He got assists. He scored goals. He controlled the play. He set the tone, and he was worried about being able to keep up with the young guys. But I think he set the pace. And what I was thinking about watching this game was how he's passing the baton down to the next generations and how inspirational that would have been. I can't imagine, sitting in a room with the Sidney Crosby and Marchand and some of these other
the leadership on and off the ice.
Yeah, and what you take away from them and how they prepare. And you saw between games leading up to the tournament, it was McKinnon and McDavid and Crosby on the ice. First at practice,
Is that right?
Practice latest, working on shots, working on power play. It was almost illegal having those three guys on a line together. And then the power play, you put Makar and Mitch Marner on there. It's crazy how good these guys are. But, their work ethic and dedication to the game set such a tone for the rest of the team, like, I was just blown away.
So take that, which is great context for those that didn't see it and those that are listening, and maybe defer to you, because did you follow the 72 Summit series?
I watched in grade school.
Okay, so try to, for those just
Like in school.
Yeah, we got a TV in and
That's amazing.
right. So but just okay. I want to turn it over to you, because building off of that, try to tie the leadership from that to what you saw in 1972 and guys that were leading Canada again in the Cold War hockey, and you know, kind of where you were as a young person, what it meant to you, right? Like, it's just very few people that watched this game that were also of the age to watch 72, which is probably just as monumental, right?
yeah. So I was about 8 years old, and so, but it sticks in my mind that.
I'm sorry to
school-
interrupt again, but for those who are listening, this is John Murphy. He's the fourth of the old guard athletes. Those that everyone's been wanting to hear from.
The
So
stoic,
the
wise
stoic,
one.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, I was probably 8 years old, and yeah, I went to a Catholic grade school. You know, pretty strict back then, and school stopped, and TV came out, and we watched
in the
that.
classroom,
Yeah,
holy shit, black and white.
yeah.
Holy.
And yeah, so after World War II, you know, the rise of the Soviets and the Cold War and the East Bloc, and then so rather than duke it out on the battlefield, they came up with the Summit series in '72, and
And it was a weird number of games too, right? Wasn't it?
geez,
Like, I don't think it was like even a regular. It wasn't like the best of. It was a weird number. Was it best of 7? Was it? I don't know.
can't remember.
And were we going back and forth? We went over.
Yeah.
Right. So we were flying into the Soviet Union
Yeah, and there's some crazy stories out of that.
of that one, right?
Yeah. And we ended up winning. And I think Ken Dryden was the goalie, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Paul Henderson scored,
Anderson
right?
Yeah.
got the goal.
Yeah. That, what's his name? The old guy, Phil Esposito.
Yeah. Bobby Clark.
Bobby Clark, no teeth, famous picture.
But I think, right, like, for you just try to sync this up. Again, like, there's a documentary series around Summit 72 that you can watch, VHS, I think, or something. But excuse me. But I think you're right. Like, if you were just trying to single out what you were just discussing, these guys are just epic leaders,
Yep.
and they can't turn it off, and they're just this, and they're carving out their livelihood time. Meaning they could put themselves at risk to get it. Like, back in those days, I mean, if you'd gone to Russia, maybe you're going to get whacked. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
But Bobby Clark, Phil Esposito, these guys, like, they were not, like, the Kachuks and them, they were throwing down, but those guys were on for it with, like, sticks. It was, like...
Helmetless.
Yeah, but it was serious, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, they
Guys-
turned off the lights, didn't they, in the one...
Yeah.
In Europe, or in Russia, I think? Like, it was...
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys giving the axe swing over there.
Yeah, right? Yeah, like, just trying to... Was it Bobby Clark that tried to get the one guy out with hack him apart?
But that's the game, and this is national pride,
Right, yeah.
right? And you know, I was just thinking too, like, we played in a rugby match, well, a couple, one against a traveling team from Ireland and then a team from Russia.
Yeah.
And as soon as you have that emblem on your
It's
chest,
different.
it's like something goes off in your head, and you like up your intensity level. Like, I already thought we were pretty intense, but you take it up incrementally from that standpoint, and you think of how good these guys are playing in the Four Nations, and if that takes hold as well. Like, they interviewed some players saying, you know, that have Drew Doughty, I think, has got 16, 18 years in the show.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is the fastest hockey game I ever played in my life.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Jesus.
So, you know, you put that emblem on your chest and you just take it up.
But what is it like? So then, because I'm fascinated by, like, you talk about the national thing, and it's an example here where we're talking about teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got the national pride, but as an individual, whether it's skydiving or what
That was I competed on the national
right?
team
But I mean,
Worlds,
like, and again, like underpinning all of that still is you're taking people that can't turn it off, and it just gets escalated, like intrinsically, genetically, whatever, and that's all that matters. So when you were, how did you feel when you put the Canadian flag on? Did you think about
there's
it?
a responsibility.
Did you really think?
Yeah,
about it?
absolutely. Yeah,
No
there's
shit,
a
eh?
responsibility. And again, like one of the things, like I was super proud to compete at Worlds. The previous year, the U.S. Nationals, they had their first Nationals, and there wasn't that many good competitors. They had a good showing, but the guys that kind of ran the organization that set the standards for how the competition was going to go I was invited. I competed at U.S. Nationals in 2001, and there's only 2 non-Americans that went there, and it was me and Drew Lipinski from Australia. And Drew, he was top 10. I think it was 16th out of about 80 people at the U.S. Nationals. So he came off that, and people were like, "Who's this guy?" At the U.S. Nationals, because people, first of all, there's a whole bunch of them that didn't know me. They weren't very happy there was non-Americans there. Mm-hmm. Well, guess who? There's 5 people on each swooping team. So this is where what I was competing in, just a quick rundown, is we get out of the airplane, open our parachute immediately, and then we take turns. There's no very laid out so we don't run into each other, and we do a turn close to the ground, so we turn all our vertical speed into horizontal speed. So I guess for those on the video, you're hanging under your parachute. When you turn, your body kicks out, and as we pendulum back down, all that vertical speed can turn into 80 plus miles an hour of horizontal speed, and then we fly through a gate with an invisible barrier. You have to make it go through distance, speed, and then there's an accuracy round of that stuff. So when I got there was a pressure on me now as the Canadian that stood out in America in the U.S. Nationals. I was the Canadian, like the American guys who went on to win first, second, third, fourth, fifth place. Like,
so you're like the reverse of this scenario here in a way. Like you're going into
I was the
sport.
Yeah, more or less in their thing, and of course the first Worlds was in California. The U.S. Nationals are in New York. So I'm competing. Now, fortunately, the Worlds there was only 5 competing, 5 other Americans, one of which had been my coach. But there was pressure when you're like, this is the first World Pond Swoop Championships ever, and.
Were you considered an outsider? Were you like discounted, like treated as?
No, I think there was people were wondering if I was gonna show up or not, because they all like there was 3 of us on the Canadian team that were genuine Canadians at skydiving Canada, and there's 2 guys on the team that were Canadians that were sponsored by a parachute company and lived in the States. So those guys were effectively American. No offense, Dave Brown, but you guys lived you lived in America and competed for Canada, and they did really well. Like these guys are phenomenal athletes. I'm trying to think of the other fellow's name, but I felt a duty to keep up with. I guess in a way, thinking about it now, it's like Dave is the American on the Canadian team, and I was the Canadian at the U.S. Nationals. But I felt pressure to show up, and everyone wanted to see what this guy who was being an imposter at the American Nationals was going to do. And there was a much bigger turnout there, and I think I was in about 30th place at Worlds. Which was like 31 or 32, I can't remember now, and that was in 2002. Yeah. So as soon as when you get that national, like we had our uniforms and that sort of thing. We had to make ourselves. There's no money involved for us at all. In fact, it costs a fair bit of money and a lot of effort. But exactly. The money never comes into it. You talk about whether these guys are getting paid millions a year or not. I don't think there's very many guys that are motivated by what they get paid. And then you look at an amateur MMA fighter and whether he's trying his hardest or not. Like it's not about the outside value.
So you're right. Like that is the point. PK Subban's viral rant is about that. But I think the point is getting made is when you become a professional athlete where there is money. So now this is what's happened is that we haven't seen. So I agree with you, but we haven't seen. In professional sports in North America, this kind of passion come out now for a long time. and the question is it because they get paid so much? Like, and to be fair to them, I mean, they are insured by the owners of these teams. They're treated like assets. Like, it's not the passion of the sports anymore.
Well, and they could have jeopardized their home teams if they get hurt.
As in, I mean, it's a real business. It's sports. So I get that point. So that's why I think it was so fascinating to see it come out, because it was just genetically hardwired in. They couldn't stop it, just like you said. Like, it had to come out. Yeah. But PK Subban, to his credit, he was on a whole bunch of platforms. The one that I caught was, he was referencing, in particular, him following basketball as a comparative, probably because the All-Star game was on. But he said, in his mind, this kind of expression is attached to the leaders of the sport of that time. And he said, when Jordan was around and Kobe was around and maybe Bird and Magic, it didn't matter that they were getting paid in the sports business. These guys were like throwing down because they couldn't turn it off. Then in hockey with Crosby, Gretzky, Messier, Lemieux, like when they were around, no one's like they can't turn it off. And then I thought about, I'm kind of a football fan. I play a little bit of football too. But it was the same for the NFL All-Star game. If you can go watch it on YouTube. The pre-game rants from Ray Lewis. Jesus Christ, Ray, calm down. He's like, fuck that. Like, we're like, it's the Super Bowl here. It's walking with this go. And the guys are blasting like Peyton Manning, and they're just tearing each other apart in the Pro Bowl. And now they're playing, what are they doing? Flag football and obstacle and foam pits or something? I don't know what's going on over there. But, like, so his point was, like, to some degree, it's a little bit about, like you said, the leadership of the guys setting the standard where it's like authentic. Crosby can't turn it off. This is how you play hockey, the sport, the athletic endeavor.
Well, when I heard PK's thing, I'm like, what's the difference? What's the difference between a pro basketball athlete and a pro hockey player? My guess is that pro basketball player can't turn it off either. So what's the differential between what we saw in the Four Nations versus, the All-Star game's fluffy at the best of time, right?
It wasn't before, though, when Jordan and those guys were in there.
I agree.
That's what he's kind of saying. The difference is that these guys have the switch.
Is it something the league's done there to protect players or protect investment, that type of thing, where hockey is like, I think they just know that as soon as you've got your bucket on and that logo on your chest, that all bets are off. And
when's the next game?
It's all done now. Now it's all about the Olympics, because the U.S. is like, we're coming for you again. So the build up going into the next Olympics is
where is the next Olympics? I forgot.
France,
Italy.
Well,
is it back in Italy again?
I think so. Yeah.
Was there any, again, staying away from too political, but do you think any of the team motivation, like we're looking at this through a lens of this, you can't turn it off, but that fast, like everyone's saying, this is the fastest game we played, like it was any motivation on this kind of political, like this rivalry between Canada and U.S. outside of the ring?
100%. Trump called, you can see this on the internet, Trump called Team USA the morning of, and the coaching staff walked with the phone through the dressing room and broadcast it so we can all hear it on the internet. So yeah, I mean, he was amping them up, and he was telling them that, bring it home, 51st state and all this, which I think the best comeback to that was, how are you enjoying becoming 11th province? And that was just, that was awesome, right?
Well, I heard also that the Trump curse now, because he also told the Chiefs.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, apparently he was like, go Chiefs, and talk to some of them, and then they lost. And then, so he said to the U.S. team, so now there's rumors of the Trump curse.
I think Drake's got the curse going. But so go back to this point of, like, between sports, the physicality, because where I was going with this with Walter, who was on here, who's now a rugby player, in my mind, when you have the best of the best in certain sports, that type of athletic endeavor, whatever it is, does escalate things. And you're a hockey guy, like, you play rec, but I suspect even in rec, it's always kind of percolating.
Oh yeah, 100%. You can feel it build in a game. And
Like even now.
oh yeah, 100%. And you know, if you go back to playing competitor or whatever, and you know the team that you're coming up against, you're more amped up for that game because you know the personalities on that team, you know who you're targeting, who you want to beat, and you know it's same with other team sports you've played. Rugby.
I have a question. Sorry, go ahead, John.
What country produces the best rugby players?
Well, New Zealand
Yeah.
historically.
So that's a country of 4 million people.
Yeah.
We lived there for a couple of years, and that's when Richie McCaw was
Like the
and,
greatest.
and he had a bad ankle, and he still played. And unfortunately, the All Blacks lost
Yeah.
that year, and so the same kind of cultural and religious significance that hockey has in Canada, rugby has in New Zealand, and they always dominate. You know, why is that? Because it's in their blood, and it's in their DNA. And, I think we as a hockey nation expect our hockey teams to win, and they expect their rugby teams to win. And it's just the way it is.
It's funny because I went into this tournament going, I think we're this is the year we maybe lose it type of thing. And it was such fantastic sport, athleticism, competition, all
Coaching,
of that.
everything,
Coaching.
yeah.
It was just all around amazing. And I'm looking forward to the Olympics now, to follow suit.
Is it next year?
Yeah. Yeah, like
26?
under a year, I think.
So
I guess it would be next Christmas. So, but it is in our blood. But there's so many, because of the way the NHL has evolved and expanded into the southern U.S. and Canadians that play for teams down there are now spreading the sport down. So it's inevitable that just due to sheer numbers,
40 million versus 400 million.
we'll lose the top spot. But the competitiveness and like the compete that these guys showed and just no give up. It kind of reminded me of our last guest, Sarah, talking about just wanting to get a race done. Well, you saw players like McKinnon took a puck in the face in warm up, took a couple stitches, he starts the game, no big deal. Guys are just like banged up and they'd have their leg chewed off before they, wouldn't play the game type of thing. Like it means that much.
So go back to the Richie McCaw because you got some insight into this. Can you?
Just when they lost, the
whole
country went into mourning.
I know, but explain to explain to people who don't know rugby, but also All Blacks, and just who Richie McCaw is and the standing he has in this sport relative to Sidney Crosby.
Yeah, he'd be like Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid. So he was captain. That was 2007, 2008. And a real leader on and off the field, and that was something that was similar to Canada. In any town you went to, there was at least one rugby pitch or field, and every town, every small city, every major city, they all had tons of rugby teams, and everybody played. Guys would finish playing for the All Blacks, and then they'd go back to their local professional team and play for those guys. That'd be like playing for the NHL.
Yeah.
And then and then you come and play for the
Senior
Blades or
Bands.
Senior Bands. And they would just play. It was crazy.
I think one of the things I was going to mention as a comparison to hockey is I think. The only reason I don't throw maybe Aussie rules or rugby league into this is because I don't think they're as international sports as hockey and rugby.
Right.
But I bet you it's got the same thing. Like hockey and rugby are the two most physical sports and that also happen to be, as soon as you get a chance to put the badge on or the crest, it doesn't matter where you are in the professional season, country trumps the business. Like it just stops. So the ability to play as an All Black will always supersede playing one of the Crusader, like 100%. Like, and the same thing here, right? Like Crosby plays for the Penguins. Penguins are nothing if he gets a chance to captain Canada. And then, coincidentally, when they play the game, there's no way not to play the game without an expression of maximum commitment and physicality, which is so ironic, right? Like, they're putting themselves at the highest degree of risk for something that isn't, they're not getting paid, but it's all this intrinsic motivation. Like, it's
They're
just
playing for something greater than that.
Yeah, right?
Well, every kid grows up either carrying the Stanley Cup or whatever, right? Or having that country logo on your jersey. You know, road hockey, rugby, whatever sport it is. You know, that is the pinnacle of achievement, I think, that kids aspire to.
Yep.
Do you think kids? I mean, you just thinking of young kids, right? You've been around different scenarios, whether it's at martial arts gym, right? Like young kids coming up, individual sports. Do you think that kids today, young kids, aspire to represent country, or do they aspire to get likes and influencers and money? Like, right? We're wired.
Quick wins.
Yeah, like we're wired. To get a chance to represent Canada in anything like you did, I would probably give my left leg for that. I never got the chance, right? But you've got some insight into like individual sports for yourself, plus these young people. Like, what do you think about young generation coming up?
Well, actually, I'm glad you asked that. My kids are pretty young, and they don't know what direction they want to go. I know you're not specifically asking about my kids, but just young people in general. And if we want to get, depends on how young. I found out today, my cousin Chris Beavis' son Luke got his black belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, through Andre Galvao. It was like a very accomplished martial artist. Big deal that Luke got it. And I think I pointed out in the past that I have this expiry with certain sports, and I used to beat myself up. That I never really get to be a champ. You know, I never get. And my cousin's son Luke, I was calling my cousin Luke, he is 26 years old and got this black belt. He's been working at jiu-jitsu. He's eat, breathed, and slept jiu-jitsu since, I don't know, it's been more than 10 years.
In Saskatoon?
So he was training, he started off, I believe, at Shears Martial Arts. So he went to another number of different schools, and he's trained in I know he was working in Detroit and like basically living, I know he lived in a van in San Diego, and I think he was in San Diego, and I phoned him to congratulate him today.
Cool,
and he's got that. Like he wants to, he's training wherever he thinks the best people are to train so he can be the best. And we talked about whether he wanted to move. He's had one MMA fight, and he said, oh, my coaches are kind of pushing me in the direction of continuing to go with jiu-jitsu. But he's got that champion mentality, and I think that I don't know enough about the structure of like competitive jiu-jitsu and if there's like a Canadian team and how that stuff works, but I know his aspirations, like he certainly would be a Canadian champion at some point. I fully believe people in the jiu-jitsu world will know his name within the next 5 years.
Is jiu-jitsu Olympic sport yet? No, I don't think so.
No.
And
judo is.
Judo
And taekwondo seem to be, and wrestling, of course, but...
Does he think of himself as representing Canada at this? Like, does he like I'm Luke Beavis from Canada, proud of that, or I'm just...
You know what? I haven't spoken to him enough about it.
Well, maybe we should get him on.
Yeah, he'd be an interesting kid to talk to about it. You know, I had a chat with him, and I brought up. I said I deeply admire your ability to like follow through and grind out some of this stuff. And I was never able to do that. And I recognized my father was kind of like that. I was like, yeah, you get about 75% good enough. Let's try something new, new sport. And Luke has always pushed through that. But he said, he goes, yeah, man, you know, you have to. And I told him about this podcast and said, I felt pretty isolated in that I didn't have somebody like, go for it. Yeah, man. Hey, you should put more hours in. It was always do less. Why are you doing so much? So he had a bit of that in his life too. He's prone to.
Why are you sleeping in a fucking van?
In a van, in San Diego,
right?
and you know, I mean, any parents. I don't know exactly what how my cousin and his wife. What their message was to Luke about that, but you're concerned your kid's living in a van. Is he going to have a living from this? I think Luke is going that direction where he's going to be successful in that.
Clearly can't turn it off.
Yeah, he cannot turn it. He cannot turn it off. And he said, when I told him my story, he said, I have surrounded myself with people that don't tell me no, and you just have to get rid of that. This 26-year-old kid was telling me. I said, I just figured that out. Not that I didn't have some influence, but I certainly didn't push anyone away that was telling me no. And he said, man, I had times when I lost. I wanted to pack it up, and those people came and picked me up, and I'm here because of them. And
That's a great story. And I heard one awesome one about Crosby and McKinnon, because I watched quite a bit of hockey over the last week. And, you think about the question we ask all our guests on when did you find out that you can't turn it off?
I imagine.
And there's this story of them training in Nova Scotia. And they're running.
Sorry, just again for the non-hockey people, they're not the same age, right?
No, Crosby's a little older,
Like,
for sure. 8 years maybe?
Yeah, like a
something
generation
like
in a hockey sense, right?
So this is the equivalent of like an old guard, middle guard
Right?
type
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
So they're doing wind sprints on a sand hill.
I heard this one. This is a good one.
And, Crosby had beat him 9 out of 10 times or something. And Nate's got him on the 10th one. Well, Crosby just reaches up, grabs his leg, and trips him to make sure that he didn't get one win out of the 10 reps that they did. And I'm like, what a pivotal moment. One, Sid's secured his dominance there, realizes he probably can't turn it off. But then Nate's probably realizing this is what it takes for me to be like this person. Because if this guy is this competitive, running some sprints on sand hills, look out when you get on the ice,
Right?
type of thing.
I have a question about the team dynamic when, obviously there's team rivalries, but so it's like you have Crosby playing in his home team. But when you take him and a bunch of other guys he's played against and put them together and say, you're Team Canada, how, I'd like to know the
All bets
internal...
are off. Once you get that on your chest, all bets are off.
Like the rivalry of the last game, the last season, the last everything.
So I'd like you to answer this, and then Mike's got to better, more modern. But no, because think of, I don't pick your sport, but again, kind of back to the hockey. Like in the 72 Summit, the pool of players that the NHL had, the teams, how many teams do we have now? We got 20 teams? Or something?
28.
How many?
28.
28 teams?
Yeah.
That was just not far off the original 6.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
so
the pool is much
just even
smaller.
the dynamic.
When you played each other so many times back
Oh
then.
God! They're just again and again, oh my God!
That's freaking
Right?
right?
No, so just what are your thoughts on that point?
You had guys like Sittler and Esposito and Dryden, guys that just loomed larger than life and led the way. And there was and those guys weren't getting paid much. And there was no benefits really. There was no, ice bath and massage therapy, all the stuff.
It was really close to how Slapshot looked.
Totally. And if anybody doesn't know what Slapshot is, it's a movie. Look it up. And watch
I'm going to watch it tonight. I'm inspired by this.
And so, those are guys that led by action and led in the
And they
dressing room.
had rivalries amongst one another before they came together on those teams. But, whether it's the 70s or 2025, as soon as you put that country crest on your chest, it's like, we are one and we need to move forward like this. And, there wasn't a lot of prep time. I think when you do, when you see the World Juniors or the Olympics, there's, a couple weeks of practice time they allow these teams to come together and gel. This one, they maybe had a day or two.
Yeah, so basically the whole thing was 2 weeks or something, right?
Not
I think that's amazing.
Is that right?
that they pulled it together,
including the tournament.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you have that level of intensity. I just think that's bloody amazing. That they get together and focus together and not outplay each other. Even if it's not even chippy with each other, just, I got to do better than you. I'm tired of your shit. I'm going to show on the ice better than you.
And the amazing part about that was not only was Canada gelling like that, but the story was the same from the States.
Oh, all four teams.
Is that right? All the teams?
And maybe, less so with Finland and Sweden because I think they've got a little bit less of a pool of that caliber of talent. So they would come together quicker. But you saw stories of Marner and McDavid that played together when they were 10 years old type of thing. So now they're playing together at this age and, they battle one another. during the regular season, but they put all that aside, and just because I think they can't turn it off, and the national pride, and they get out there and just go for it.
So you've got guys, to your question about gelling on the same team, then you've got teammates professionally that have played their entire careers with each other, now throwing down against each other.
Yeah.
Right? Marner and Matthews, for example, captain of the U.S. again, right? So, you've got to maybe done this a little bit, like, John as well. Like, you got teammates that you played with, and all of a sudden now we're not, for the time being, we're arch enemies.
Well, that was one of the fights at the start of the game. With Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett, right? They were on the Stanley Cup winning team last year, and they dropped the mitts right on puck drop.
They were. Someone said the teammates are 6 years on Ottawa.
Yeah,
I believe that.
Right? Like, I mean, that.
That's like, to me, it's just, you can't turn it. They didn't turn it off.
Yeah.
They clearly did not turn it
No,
off.
that's exactly what had happened. And then there's another interesting dynamic, was not only do you have player against player, but Brad Marchand, who's a superstar on the Canadian side, is the captain of the Boston Bruins. He's been with the Bruins his entire career. And he's in Boston Gardens with his home fans, generally speaking, there. And
Playing for the wrong team.
Playing for the opposite team.
so many great storylines,
right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And it kind of comes all the way back to, are you going to, or not, I guess the second part is, are you going to see a change in this kind of approach to getting best on best, and other professional sports now revisiting what they're doing? And then also, is that kind of inflection point, in a way, confirming why OGA Athletics is kind of now out and about talking about this, is that, you know, there's, and actually you kind of tie it in, right? I mean, this leadership group that there's the young guys for sure, but left to their own, just the young guys. It's the young guys seeing Crosby, the young guys, you know, even on the American, like, they're seeing examples of people doing this for a decade ahead of them. Mentorship. I think that's what we talk about here, is right. Like, that's why we had Walter on, and we're gonna have some other young people. Or Ryan is a middle guard, right? Like, the whole point here is, I was inspired by you, John Murphy, older than me, and then we're passing it through. And I think whenever you can just like earn it, learn it, and share it, and you're not lecturing, it resonates, right?
Think of how this sets up some of those younger players on that team, or watching. Level of commitment, your level of compete, the effort that it takes, the like all out, I gotta persevere,
here's what it takes to win,
fatigue and pain, and you know, all these different things, all these distractions, and focus on the goal at hand.
I would think if you took those guys and put them on a frozen sluice someplace where nobody else was watching, they'd still play the same. They play balls out and want to win.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way they are.
That's because, I mean, as an example, when you grew up and there was no internet, there's no likes, there's no influence, there's no, right? Like, nobody's giving you any accolades, right? Like, zero. Like, that time, you're looking at a black and white television with big tubes in the back or whatever's, you know.
Well, and see, I think that's one of the things that's changing when you're talking about younger kids, because I think for me and Mike, maybe you guys, I got up in the morning, I walked to school.
And you're referencing the fact you guys are in like rural communities growing up.
No, I grew up in Saskatoon.
Oh.
Walked to George Vanier, played shinny in the morning
you're
before
hockey,
school, yeah. Played at recess, played at lunchtime, played shinny at recess.
Yeah, I ate
Played
my lunch
after
at
school.
morning recess so I could play hockey at lunch.
I never played on an organized team, but I sure had my skates on, the lights were on in the evenings or whatever. Like,
Yeah, which school did you go to?
I went to Grosvenor Park and Greystone Heights Elementary, and then some of my favorite. We'd play at 10 at night on a school night, and kids were still coming. Yeah. You know,
And you weren't even a hockey player, 'cause you're doing all this other stuff.
No,
you still did it.
Yeah, what else do you do?
See,
You go sit and I'm like, holy cow, they turn the lights on in the rink at Greystone at night. Okay, let's go.
Cool,
just
eh?
5
I
o'clock
think
at
that's
night.
part of our culture, except now it's changing because, I mean, electronics is the devil's work. Tablets, iPhones. No, they are. Even toddlers are starting to suffer from not moving enough because, and plus, well, I'm kind of an asshole, but I'm going to say this. There's a tendency to bubble wrap kids. I don't want you to fall. Because there's a couple of, the American Pediatric Association is saying, oh, you should let your kid play and you should let them fall off the monkey bars. So
that's an actual
that's an
scientific decree.
That's a recommendation.
You have to say that now.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
Because it had gone so far the other way.
Yeah.
Really?
Parents are getting arrested for letting their kids play in the backyards by themselves. I mean, these are crazy stories. Usually coming to the United States, where it's like a neighbor. Oh, there's like an unsupervised 5-year-old in the backyard, and they come and say, like, I walked to school when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, 2 blocks, but I still walk by myself. And then now we bubble wrap them, and they're not allowed to go by themselves. They might get stolen. They might get hurt.
Didn't you play shinny all the time when you were a kid?
Well, of course. I mean, I got in trouble not.
My oldest son's 20. They went out on 2 nights ago and played in an outdoor rink.
By themselves? You're a negligent parent.
Alone. Probably had a case of beer in the snowbank beside the rink, but
old school.
I have a question technology-wise for you, Mike, because I've been asking lots of cyclists this, and again, not to harp on cycling and stuff, I'm super pumped about it, but there's so much trackability, and now with Strava being a social media thing that adds exercise into it, and I've asked a few people at the bike doctor in the last few days, I always seem to end up there, but would you bike as much if it wasn't for our watches, GPSs, Strava, and the tracking, the heart rate, the distance, the telling you, like, we were pretty kind of pumped about showing each other, hey, there's my year in review just showed up, look how many K I did, and Strava tells you how awesome you are and stuff like that. Does it affect your motivation?
from a cycling standpoint, no, because I just
knew you were going to say that.
love doing it.
Yeah.
Maybe in other aspects, like if I'm short of workout that week or something like that, I've got an Apple Watch, I've got a Garmin, I've tried a whole bunch of stuff. It's more of a anxiety bracelet for not closing rings in the day. Like,
right.
Oh, geez, I should be like walking a few more steps, that type of thing. And I get why they do it, because it's not probably intended for guys like us that had 320 active days or 360
Right.
active days last year type of thing.
No, because you had more than me, and I'm pissed off. And it's affecting this year now. I'm like, I can't take it.
There's a competitor.
Yeah.
Of course, it has
It's
to be
not
competitive.
it's not healthy, but or
and
is
I
it? I
don't-
don't know.
I actually-
It's set for that.
I actually don't post most of the stuff I do on Strava. I basically keep it to skiing, golf, and cycling. I don't put any of my workouts on there, or yoga or stretching, that type of thing. Because one, like, who cares? And
That's what I think.
I
usually, too,
also-
about myself.
I do it as a personal thing to keep track of progress. So maximum heart rates and wattage outputs, that sort of thing. So that's more of how I use that kind of technology.
When you did all your different athletics, right, which is a variety, were you logging
Good question.
or were you in your head?
In my head.
All of it?
Yep.
You knew what your like times were, your max lifts, that sort of thing, and just kept
But
it all
honestly,
up
there
there.
was no...
Had a
that's just
chalkboard.
when how to cycle your training and all that stuff was just coming in. You had to write to Powerlifting USA, and then you had to wait a month to get the magazine, and then it would have some workouts in it. There was nothing.
But did you write it down on a piece of anything?
A few times I did, but most of the time it was just in my head. And honestly, I mean, this whole thing about passing on knowledge. Every week, go to a maximum. Maximum bench press, maximum squat.
You're gonna get in trouble.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Hand pull.
Well, and here's a story for you. I wish I would have had some of that knowledge and maybe a mentor back in high school. I was running track, and you're talking about cycling and like cycling your workouts. I was going to a track meet, and I was a sprinter and thrower in track. And I actually did a workout before a track meet one day because I wanted my arms to look bigger, and I thought, well, this might be a good warm-up for the day. And geez, I look back going, man, how much energy did I expend doing a little workout before I hit the track just so I look better in my like skimpy shorts?
You got the chicks though.
I'd say it paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Didn't set any
Did you
provincial records, but
Did you paper log like your workouts?
No, I chalk it up to my personality. There's only one thing that I log, and some people that know me will laugh if they hear this, but my calendar is full of stuff, right? Like that's the only place I put anything down. Just because I have
So
to.
if I go back to 3 days ago, I can see what your workout was?
No, not that. I'm talking about my life, like like activities. But only that's the only place that I have any record of anything that I do is just time slot based. But the depth of those activities, I just lazy. I don't know what the thing is, but I've had people say to me that because we've been doing it for so long, it's just you start doing these math calculations and you've done this so much that like I can do a calculation and a projection and I can understand where I'm at and maybe someone else that's in a similar space just to like this collective calculation that I carry around. Now, having said that, I have told a couple of people the one thing I would like to do is to go into the world of like Whoop. Right. So where you're getting biofeedback. Okay, so I don't. It's not so much me writing stuff down, but it's tracking my physiological thing. Because I might. There's a theory out there that people like us, or David Goggins or whatever, right? Your mental state may not be actually matching your optimal physical state, or vice versa. You may think you're worse off than you really are, or you're better than you, right? And so you push and you shouldn't.
I got an Oura ring 2 years ago.
Is that what that is?
And I've been wearing it religiously. One, because I was a terrible sleeper, and I'd always wake up. Well, one, I'd have trouble sleeping because I'd be worried about not sleeping, and then I'd wake up going, man, I'm going to be a disaster today because I didn't sleep enough. Well, sometimes my ring tells me that I'm like not as bad off as what I thought.
Is that
it
what
was.
that does?
Yeah, it's a sleep tracker. And then through the day, it'll tell you like periods of stress and this type of thing. So it gives you great feedback on your kind of readiness every day. So my wife and daughter flew out this morning. I was up last night because I had like a bunch of stuff at work today. And I thought I had an awful sleep. And it actually wasn't too bad when I got up and checked it this morning. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a lot better day now because my rings told me that I'm not as bad as what I thought I was.
So is it a placebo effect? Because the ring said, you had a good sleep, you're good.
I think so.
Because if you can sleep with a chunk like this on, which I do, but it does the same thing. But my sleep,
that thing is massive. What is that?
It's for clubbing seals.
Where do you think
Garmin?
Where do you think you got those arms?
Garmin Arctic.
It's like the Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, it's
guy.
just
But I don't know what the rings versus the watch, but like this always tells me my stress is always way low, but I don't sleep well, and I don't know. I quit. I look at this and I get about half of what my friends do for sleep, but I generally feel about the same each day. But I wonder how much of it is you're just looking and saying, "Oh, it says I'm not stressed. I guess I'm not stressed," or it says I didn't sleep right, so I guess I didn't sleep.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So this is on you 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And it's going to your Apple Watch or something, or
Yeah, your phone. Yeah, just connects to your phone.
and what is it? What is the like heart rate or what is it?
Heart rate, oxygen levels.
Really?
Yeah, you name it.
I thought you were one of those cool
HRV.
Joe Rogan guys with the rubber ring. That's what I thought that was.
Well, I had one of those on this one instead of wearing like a...
Yeah, like wedding ring. That's what I thought that was. But that's an
No, this is like lots of electronics in there.
How often do you have to charge it? Is this
Every
a
3
conversation
days?
for the show?
It's interesting because it's part of the biofeedback thing.
Well, yeah, and having those like I've never. I'll tell you this: I've never woken. It tells you your training readiness, the Garmin training readiness.
Yeah.
It'll tell me. I'll look at it as I'm going down to the gym, and it's like not zero rest today, and I'm like, "Fuck you." So I don't know. It's like I don't like. watch television.
That's why John and I don't want to wear these things because like fuck, we're not gonna.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like they've got the information, but I'm not doing anything with it. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
And how much you sleep. Like some people can sleep 4 hours, they're fine. Other people need 8. Some people need 10. It's variable. And yeah, when you start thinking about it and like, there's this artificial number, and then you start thinking about it. I'm more in a favor of just kind of go with the flow. And some people do have trouble sleeping, and it's a big problem. And some people need sleep hygiene. But yeah, I think
Speaking of sleep,
you get too over analytical.
So, just kind of tying it all back together here. You think of how this all started with, we had like professional sports coming to get their best on best, and then this crew kind of stepped forward and set the example because in a way they can't turn it off, the passion, all this, and then we're kind of finishing with like technology that can or may amplify or not. But even if technology or not, or money or not, all 4 of us are still wired to.
Yeah, even if your watch says don't work
out,
out,
fucking watch.
I was going to ask you. You went to the gym today, right?
Well, look at I'm
Okay,
still
but
sweating.
I also noticed you've got a finger injury. Did that turn into anything? You're like, I better not lift today. I've got sore. I don't know what you got going on there.
No, it's funny. You can see it. I think I'm not trying to get sympathy, but I think I dislocated this finger in one of my first sessions of jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, well...
Oh, you got the finger bar.
No, I did it myself.
Oh.
I just went down on it, and all of a sudden I heard this loud pop. I looked down, it was like at a right angle or something.
Was it hanging like that?
A little bit. And I'm like, it doesn't hurt too bad. And then I was like, well, I got to keep going for the session.
So did you hook it into the gi and start?
No, this is no gi, right? So then I was like, well... And then it was just kind of limply been hanging there when it doesn't really hurt.
There's
but
a reason for that.
So you threw some tape on it.
So now I just tape it up all the time when I need to do something, and it's fine.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Don't get it checked out.
Well, what are you going to do with it?
Put a splint on it so
Maybe
it heals.
you need
No,
to
that's
get it
bullshit because it's just no.
See, you're the same as me. It's just instead of my watch telling you how to work on this broken finger.
I know because I also he might listen to this, but my instructor Jason Becky, his finger looks the same, and I'm like, well, that guy fucking got through it. It's a little funny looking, and it finally just took that shape. He says it doesn't hurt, and I'm like, well, eventually I guess mine will just be the same. I mean, we were at a state.
Are you getting cauliflower ear?
Not yet. Not yet. I'm not that good. I'm not worthy enough for that. So. But yeah, so I think that's kind of a cool way to finish it off is technology, money, likes, influence, profile, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter.
Nothing.
You get the opportunity to go flat out for your passion of your athletic activity, whatever it is. You had it with skydiving in the worlds, and
well, I think you pointed out with a lot of this that so when you put that national symbol on yourselves, which you guys didn't explain what yours was. You mentioned you both had a national. Where were you? What was that about?
Go ahead.
Well, it was a Team Sask rugby, and was it a provincial team or a?
No, it was a provincial team, and we were playing the Russian national team from Siberia, and they had played the Canadian team or B team the week before, and we funny kind of ties into this story about fisticuffs, but we had heard the week before it was just a total shit show. It's because this team from Siberia would play like south of France against those clubs, and that's very violent rugby historically. Just
most rugby isn't violent.
well, no, this one's a little different.
So.
That one's a little crazy down there. So that's how they learned to play. So we heard in the build up to this that the game before got really messy. It's like, okay, how messy? And do you remember going into the locker room before? Like I hope I get this right. You were in it. But I think the coach basically said to us,
"Be ready,
because this is going to be maybe something you've never seen." And then the funny line was something like, "We can't expect you to get involved, and we understand. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. So maybe you put your hand up, kind of thing.
It's like your watch telling you not to work out. Don't get involved. Things
watch your
start to
buddy
get greasy.
Okay.
Yeah, so everyone's in this room of like testosterone, right? And everyone looks at it, fuck that. And we rolled out, and it became exactly that. And I've got the newspaper article on the thing, and I've got whatever 20 stitches, and I just got boot fucked and sent to the hospital. And Mike did a good job. I think you knocked someone. Did you knock someone out?
I got it.
I think
Gave a few more than I took, maybe.
Yeah,
in
no,
that
it became
one.
Got some good licks.
It became before the internet, TSN ran this thing, and it was all over national highlights. People were calling everyone saying, because the fight wasn't like a normal square off. That's kind of where we got a little bit out of sync. We were expecting to be like a hockey fight, and these guys were fighting like it was a thug fight. It was like a brawl, 3-on-1, kicking, flying legs. Like it was stuff was going left and right.
Did you play any rugby?
No, we didn't. So actually, the game was.
Yeah, it was good.
It was a good game, but that fight happened twice in the same game.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of blood.
But I think that illustrates, though, that I guess what I was getting at, I think that's a great story, and I want to hear more of it. I want to hear the dirty stuff later on. But we can't turn it off, but if we put that representation on our chest, we can turn it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe the hockey guys, the Canadian team, did that too.
Yeah.
That's a great way to end it.
Yeah,
Turned up a little bit.
Turned it up a little bit in this episode. All right, for those that can turn it off, then we'll be back with episode 6, and whether we roll with the crew again or I guess we'll let people know. So, all right, till the next time, cheers.